Yes. Good morning, all of you. I hope you are able to hear me. Pranav, I need to check them, but I think I'm not able to find them. Yeah. So I think we are good to go. Yes. So let's start. Yeah, you can see it. It will define our today's topic also, right? Now, let me revise the last class. Then I'll proceed to the next class. So the last class we were discussing about the preparation methods. I will discuss the last part. What were the preparation methods we had seen? We had seen the preparation of colloids can be done by three methods: chemical methods, electrical disintegration method, peptidization method, right? So in the chemical methods, we saw four types of method: double decomposition, oxidation, reduction, hydrolysis, right? And in double decomposition, we saw the double displacement type of reaction will occur. Arsenic will combine with sulfide to form arsenic sulfide. H will combine with oxygen to form H2O. You'll get arsenic sulfide. The arsenic sulfide which you obtain here will be in the form of colloid, right? Then you saw the examples of oxidation reaction where SO2 was used as oxidizing agent, correct? And you can see H2S has been oxidized to H2O, correct? Addition of oxygen. So this was the example of oxidation we had discussed. Then reduction was, example was where gold was reduced from +3 to +3 to 0 by tin, and tin itself got oxidized. So tin was acting as reducing agent here to reduce gold from +3 to 0. Then we saw the example of hydrolysis was FeCl3. When you treat it with H2O, it gives you ferric hydroxide chloride plus HCl, correct? Yes. All right, I'll come to that, Meghna. So 1 nanometer to 1000 nanometer, right? So yeah, the next method was Briggs arc method. We said it is used only for precious metals colloids like gold, platinum, etc. So you take whatever metal ka colloidal solution you want to make, take its electrodes here, right? Supply high electricity here so that these metal electrodes will form vapors, and there was a dispersion medium, ice bath. So vapors will combine with dispersion medium. Dispersed phase is your vapors, dispersion medium is there. They will combine to form a colloid which will freeze out or which will solidify due to ice bath, correct? Other notes are uploaded, beta, check again. Other notes are uploaded, check again. So yes, Veerbhadra, the dispersed phase here is vapors of these metal electrodes. Okay? So this was your Briggs arc method. Then we solved some questions. Then we discussed peptidization. So in peptidization, it's a process where you convert your colloidal particles into, when you convert your colloidal particles into precipitate, the process is called precipitation or coagulation. The reverse process where you convert a big precipitate into colloidal particles is known as peptidization. Correct? This is what we had studied, right? So now, peptidization is the process of converting precipitate into colloidal particles by shaking it in the presence of electrolyte. Some electrolyte you can add that will act as the peptizing agent, right? So we had taken the example of, we said there are three processes. First, precipitate adsorb on its surface any ion of the electrolyte, right? And this causes the development of some charge on the precipitate, which breaks the precipitate into smaller particles. We had seen the example of FeOH3. FeOH3 in the presence of FeCl3 adsorbed Fe3 plus ions on its surface. So the surface became positively charged, correct? Due to this positive charge surface, it will attract the particles towards itself, or you can say the positive charge created here, will break this precipitate into smaller particles of colloidal range, right? Because due to this positive charge creation, there will be a negative charge created on the other side, right? So to do that, it has to move close to the surface. When it do so, the particles will move here, right? And the precipitate will break. It is just like positive charge Fe3 plus on the surface will attract OH minus from the precipitate, so that precipitate will break. This is how the peptidization works, right? Now, so this is what we had discussed, I think, correct? Then we had to discuss purification of colloid, correct? So I said you purification of colloids may we have to see 4 methods. So what is the necessity of it? We have already discussed. Colloidal solutions generally contain excessive amount of electrolytes. If you do not remove those excessive amount of electrolytes, your colloidal particles might get coagulated. If you don't want your colloidal particles to get coagulated, you should do purification of your colloid to remove extra electrolyte. One thing I would like to tell you here that you should keep in mind, if you convert colloidal particles into precipitate, this process is known as precipitation or coagulation or flocculation also you can say. It is known as coagulation or you can say flocculation. Whereas the reverse process is known as peptidization. You need electrolyte for both of them. Both of them happens in the presence of electrolyte only. You need electrolyte for both of them. Okay? So you need electrolyte to do precipitation also. You need electrolyte to do peptidization also. Keep this in mind. Now we saw the methods of purification. We said there will be 4 methods we'll be discussing. What are those 4 methods? Dialysis, electrodialysis, ultrafiltration, and then we'll go towards ultracentrifugation. Okay? Let us see what it is. So we'll start with the today's class, right? So let us move ahead. Right. So you are discussing dialysis, right? So I had explained in brief how dialysis works. The principle behind dialysis is there is a semi-permeable membrane. You put your colloidal solution in it. So colloidal solution will contain colloidal particles and impurities. Impurities are also referred here as crystalloids. They are also referred as crystalloids. Okay? So what will happen? The semi-permeable membrane does not allow colloidal particles to pass through. So colloidal particles will remain inside the membrane, whereas the impurities will pass from the membrane to the solution. Impurities will pass from the membrane to the solution, right? So due to this, all the impurities will go outside into the solution. Correct? So pure colloidal particles will be obtained inside the dialysis bag. This is known as dialysis bag. So pure colloidal particles will be obtained inside the dialysis bag. Right. So now the important thing is this is also used in purification. Same function is performed by kidney in your body. Same function is performed by kidney in your body. So your body has lot of urea, lot of your blood basically has lot of urea, lot of serine, lot of creatinines. All the impurities are there in your body, right? So all those are removed by your kidney. Your kidney act like a dialysis bag. So kidney act like a dialysis bag, right? So it removes all the impurities from your blood. This is how dialysis takes place in a kidney. Okay? Doesn't it allow selected particles to pass through? It's same thing, no? Kirti, what we have written here is same thing what you are saying. It allows selected particles means what? It allows crystalloids to pass through. It does not allow colloidal particles to pass through. What does it mean? It's selected only, no? It is allowing only crystalloids to pass through, not colloidal particles. That same thing what you are saying, right? So any doubt in dialysis, anyone? Yes, anyone having any doubt in dialysis? Any doubts with dialysis, anyone? Please ask quickly. Right. This much only it is. Yes, it is this much only. What else you want? There's a principle you need to know. Then working you need to know. Principle is the dialysis bag allows only crystalloids to pass through. Right. Working is you take a container, place water in it, put a dialysis bag. Dialysis bag you will put your water plus crystalloid, right? And dialysis membrane will allow only the crystalloids to pass through. Pure colloidal particles will be obtained in dialysis bag. That's all. That's all you need to know. What forces the impurities to move out? The osmotic pressure, right? Outside and inside solution. The osmotic pressure will be different. Right? Or you can say not just osmosis, diffusion. You can say diffusion की वजह से particles will move out. Osmosis की वजह से solvent will move in and out. So it will be diffusion. Adesh. What is last line? Explain again. Pure colloidal particles are obtained inside the dialysis bag. Rajnandan, if the impurities are going outside, you have taken, see, I am repeating the stuff. What you have taken inside the dialysis bag? You have taken colloidal particles which contain impurities. So if impurities move out, what will left inside the dialysis bag? Only colloidal particles will be left inside the dialysis bag. Dialyzer is the bag or the whole apparatus? Dialyzer is the whole apparatus. Dialyzer is the whole apparatus. What is dialysis bag? This bag which contains a membrane. This is your dialysis bag. This hole is known as your dialysis bag. Right? So let's take the next method. Next method is even easier. That is electrodialysis. Right? Electrodialysis. Whole process is same. You are using the fact that colloidal particles contain charge. How they contain charge, we are going to discuss today. How they contain charge, we are going to discuss today. Don't worry about it. So colloidal particles contain charge. Now what we did is we took the same apparatus. We just applied electrodes on the either side of the container. So here you have connected, there is one metal here, there is one metal plate here. So this metal plate is connected to positive terminal of the battery, and this metal plate is connected to negative terminal of the battery. Correct? Right? So you are applying electric field basically. So what will happen among crystalloid and impurities? Among crystalloid and impurities, they will carry some charge, right? So what will happen? See here, your impurities are in light yellow. So impurities are in this experiment, impurities are carrying positive charge, whereas your colloidal particles are carrying negative charge. So colloidal particles will move or diffuse towards anode, whereas the impurities which have the positive charge will diffuse towards cathode, towards oppositely charged electrode. So when they diffuse towards cathode, they can move out of the membrane because membrane allows the impurities to pass through. But colloidal particles will not be able to pass through the membrane because membrane does not allow colloidal particles to pass through. Pore size is very small. Size is such that only impurities can pass. So what will happen? All impurities will go out. What will be left inside? You will be getting only what inside? Colloidal particles. Sole particles will be left inside and impurities will be collected outside in the beaker. Now, why did we use electricity here then? If the dialysis was doing the same purpose, why are we using electricity? Why are impurities near anode? After they move into the solution, in solution they will not be staying at one place, no? In solution they will be moving randomly everywhere. So they can be present everywhere. You can say more will be here, less will be here. Pranav, obviously, no, Pranav. It's not like they will not be present. They will be randomly movement in motion, so they can be present. So why are we using electricity then? To make the process fast. Earlier, what was happening? Only due to diffusion, impurities were moving out. Only due to diffusion. But now, when you apply electricity, the impurities will move faster because of electric field. So, why we apply electricity? Electrodialysis is faster than dialysis. It is faster than dialysis, except from the fact that you apply electricity in dialysis, the everything remains same here. Nothing else changes, right? Yes, Athar, obviously, no. Otherwise, membrane would allow them to pass. Yes, Athar, you're right. Is that clear? So to make your dialysis faster, we use electrodialysis. This is also used for purification of colloids, right? So ordinary dialysis is slow. We carry out the dialysis in the presence of electricity, right? If your normal dialysis is slow, we carry out the dialysis in the presence of electricity, then it is called electrodialysis. Okay? But still impurities will have large size. How can you say that? Impurities can have smaller size, no? The whole fact is based on that. If impurities are having larger size, then it is not colloidal solution, it is impurities solution. Right? Not all impurities will have charge. Most of them will have charge. What are your impurities, Shreyas? Generally, what are your impurities? Think about it. What are your impurities? Your impurities or crystalloid generally are electrolyte part. Generally are part of electrolyte. Electrolytes are usually charged. Correct? But only in lyophobic colloids. Pritesh, we are not saying the colloid ka charge. Colloid may or may not be charged, but impurities will be charged, no? Impurities will be charged. Impurities will be charged, right? Because most of the impurities come from the electrolyte. For example, if I give you your body, right? Your blood contains calcium ions, it contains phosphate, it contains many other dissolved ions. So they also act as, like calcium is important for your body. There are certain other ions which act as an impurity for your blood, right? Or let's say if your blood has excessive calcium, it might cause a risk to your body. Excessive phosphate, then those will also be acting as impurity in your blood, right? So this is what you can explain it. If the impurities are larger than colloidal particles, then you cannot separate it through this. Then you cannot separate it through dialysis. Ishanvi. Then you cannot separate it through dialysis, right? We need to use some other method. Is that clear, everyone? Is that clear, everyone? I think I have taken most of your doubts. Yeah. Yeah, specifically remove positive charge. Yes, Chetna. Let's move ahead. With the next method is ultrafiltration, right? So what is ultrafiltration? So see this carefully. You must have done filtration, basic filtration in your lab. So basic filter paper which you use, rough filter paper we say. If you see it in sunlight, you can see the rectangular pores in it, right? So pore size is very large. If the pore size is very large and you take colloidal solution, I hope you have done the separation. There's a conical flask, you put a funnel on it, put a filter paper on the funnel, then you pass your solution from the funnel. So all the impurities are left on the filter paper and pure solution is obtained in the conical flask. This is how you do it, right? You take a conical flask, put a funnel in it, put a filter paper on it, then you pass your solution through it. Impurities are collected on filter paper and pure solution is obtained. This is the general process of filtration. But the point here is colloidal particles have very small size. If you try to pass it through normal filter paper, all the colloidal particles and impurities, everything will pass through because their particle size is very small. So therefore, what do we need to do? We need to take our filter paper, its pore size is very large, we need to reduce its pore size, right? When you take a normal filter paper and reduce its pore size, then it is known as ultra filter paper, right? So ultra filter paper is a normal filter paper with a reduced pore size, right? So ordinary filter paper has large pore size, therefore it is not useful for us. So ordinary filter papers are therefore impregnated, you can say, or dissolved, you can say treated. So ordinary filter paper is treated with collodion. What is collodion? Collodion has small pores, right? Separate colloid particles. So I'll tell you what is collodion you use here. So generally used collodion here is nitrocellulose. 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 So what do you do generally? You take your filter paper, you dip it in nitrocellulose solution. So when you dip it in nitrocellulose solution, the filter paper, when you take it out, you have to dry it. So nitrocellulose ke baad you have to treat it with 4%, I think, formaldehyde solution. If I remember correct, formaldehyde solution, right? I'll confirm the concentration. So special filter papers are there for ultrafiltration. Yes, we use special filter paper. I'm telling you how to make those special filter papers. I'm telling you that only, right? So if you see this carefully, so what are we doing here? We have taken our normal filter paper, correct? Normal filter paper is treated with nitrocellulose and then it is dried in. It is dried in 4% formaldehyde solution. So when you do that, the dried paper will have a small pore size. And here nitrocellulose acts as a collodion. Collodion is a solution which is used to reduce the pore size, right? It is 4% nitrocellulose. Yeah, maybe. It must be 4% nitrocellulose. Right? So it must be 4% nitrocellulose. So this is what you need to do, correct? This is how the process works. So now what you can do here is, when you reduce the pore size of the filter paper, right, the colloidal particles will not be able to pass through the filter paper, right? Impurities will be able to pass through the filter paper, but colloidal particles cannot. This is how it will work. Now let me give you the exact value. Just a minute. Yes. So yeah, the same thing, correct. The concentrations are correct. It is 4% only. Now, if you see, what you are going to do next is, you will take a same process. You will take a conical flask. Up to you how you perform it. You will put a separating funnel on it. Put your filter paper on it. Now filter paper has a reduced pore size. You will allow your solution containing colloidal particles and impurities to pass through this. So what will happen? All the colloidal particles will be obtained on the filter paper, right? And the impurities will be collected in the flask. You'll get your impurities in the flask. That's all. Okay? So now you can say that indirectly, you can say your filter paper is now acting as a membrane, dialysis membrane. You can directly say that also. Your filter paper is now acting as a dialysis membrane, right? Right. So now, Gaurish, this thing is correct, beta. Gaurish, what you are taking is a formal definition. I'm telling you experimentally how you do it, right? Experimentally how you do it. So second point again, what was the second point? Ordinary filter paper. So nothing to do, I'll tell you. See, you take your, this is how we do it in lab. Listen carefully. You take your normal filter paper, dip it in a nitrocellulose solution, right? Take it out, let it little bit dry. Then you apply some formaldehyde solution on it. Then you let it dry for 15-20 minutes in sunlight. When it gets dried in sunlight, your filter paper which you obtain will be very hard. It will not be very fluffy and soft. It will be a hard filter paper. So what does this solution do is, this solution reduces the pore size of the filter paper. So now the pore size, if initially it was this much, now it will become very less. So what happens because of that? If the pore size decreases, now when you allow your colloidal solution to pass through it, so from the filter paper, only the impurities will pass, right? Your colloidal particles will not be able to pass through the filter paper because the filter paper pore size is small now. So what is the purpose of treating it with these two? These two are used to reduce the pore size. These two are used to reduce pore size. These two are used to reduce pore size. Correct? Is that clear? Now the paper which you have created now is known as ultra filter paper, and the process is known as ultra filtration. What is colloidon? Colloidon is a mixture of these two. Colloidon is a mixture of 4% nitrocellulose and formaldehyde solution. Okay? Now the case is, we do not mix them and treat it together. We treat them one by one, right? If you go and Google it, or if you read books, they will give you colloidon is a mixture of 4% nitrocellulose plus alcohol plus ether plus formaldehyde, etc., etc. But generally when you do it in lab, how you do it is, you take a nitrocellulose solution, you take a formaldehyde solution, you dip in both of them one by one, and then let your filter paper dry for some time. That is the process which is done in lab. Why only 4%? It is standard concentration. Optimized. Optimized matlab they have tried all the concentration. This concentration suited best. Like you can say this also, that at this you require a desired pore size. So at this concentration you got that desired pore size. You can say that. At a lower concentration or higher concentration, the pore size was smaller or larger, which you didn't want. Is filter paper has already less pore size than colloidon? Then no need to. Yes, then no need to. Then there is one more thing here. As many of you are saying, we don't need colloidon. Actually, we don't need colloidon if you use very expensive filter papers. They are known as Whatman filter papers generally. So when you use those filter papers, then you need not worry about reducing the pore size. Whatman filter paper has very less pore size. They are readily available in the market also, you can use them, but they are expensive than a normal filter paper, right? Conversion of filter paper to special one is important for practicals. No, it's not there in your syllabus only. Ultra filtration is a slow process. Yes, ultra filtration will be relatively slower than normal filtration. Correct. I hope it is clear. Yes? Right. Now, if you see this carefully, just a minute. Right. So, yeah. Any doubt in this? Anyone? So, except nitrocellulose. Most of the times nitrocellulose is only used. In case you get a question, what is the role of nitrocellulose and formaldehyde separately? Then you can say nitrocellulose is used to reduce pore size. If they ask separately, ideally they should not, but in case, it's used to reduce pore size, and formaldehyde is used to harden your paper, increase the hardness of the paper, increasing the hardness of the paper. Used to increase hardness of paper. Right? So this is the basically ultra filtration. I hope it is clear. Do not just worry about this setup. It is just for a particular type of colloidal solution. Generally, in lab we generally do it using normal filter paper. Sometimes vacuum is required. Sometimes high pressure is required if the process is very slow. If the process is very slow, like it is taking 2-3 days for filtration, then we apply vacuum. Then we take, there is a funnel outside. We apply pressure from the vacuum here, so that all the pressure will create, it will create lot of pressure inside, so that the filtration process becomes faster. So you apply the pressure inside, so that the filtration process will become faster, if it is taking lot of time. But again, there is a risk in it. Colloidal particles under the pressure might come into the solution. So generally we avoid it. Okay? Suction pressure. You can say that suction pressure also Virabhadra. Right? Yes, Shreyas. There's no concentration mentioned for formaldehyde, Shreyas, but that depends upon the solution. Right? So ultracentrifugation. Or how many of you know about centrifugation? You must be knowing it. How many of you know about centrifugation? And if you know it, what it is, how it works, how your centrifugation works, what is the need to harden the filter paper? Soft filter paper will tear apart, no, Ganesh, by the pressure of the solution. It will tear apart. You will not be able to. You have to remove your filter paper and collect colloidal particles back, no? I have got many different answers. Right, very good. It is used to separate butter from milk, all those things, very good, like a grinder. You can say that. See, generally what happens is, what is the principle involved in centrifugation is, you take a solution containing two components, right? A and B. Some of them will have less density, some of them will have more density, right? So what will happen, when you rotate it at very high speed, what happens? The lighter component is collected at the top and the heavier component settles at the bottom, so that you can remove the lighter component by separating it. If you have seen this process at home, I don't know what you say it. If you have seen this process at home, so there also they remove all the butter with hands, like you can remove it like this. That is called decanting off. That process in science is called decanting off. Okay? So churning, you can say churning, or decanting off is the actual word, right? So what is ultracentrifugation then? It is centrifugation only, but there is a difference in normal centrifugation and this centrifugation. Since the particles are very small, the density is very small. And if these densities are very small, at a normal speed, you cannot separate them. You need to rotate them at very high speed. When you rotate them at very high speed, then only you can separate the colloidal particles, correct? Yes, you can say that, Gaurish. So the ultracentrifugation can be made faster by applying more force, by rotating it at a very high speed, increasing the RPM. RPM means rotation per minute. Okay? So ultracentrifugation involves the separation of colloidal particles from impurities by centrifugal force, obviously. The impurity sole is taken in the impure colloidal solution is taken in a test tube, placed in an ultracentrifuge. I'll tell you how ultracentrifuge is. It is like this. There are a lot of slots in a centrifuge. You can put test tubes here. Then this machine will be closed and it will be rotated at very high speed. These test tubes will be rotated at very high speed. This is how it looks like. So it is taken in a tube and tube is placed in an ultracentrifuge. The tube is rotated at very high speeds. On account of this, colloidal particles settle down because they have more density, right? Impurities are smaller size, they have less density, right? And the impurities remain in the solution. They remain at the top and colloidal particles settle at the bottom, correct? The solution is termed as centrifugate. The settled colloidal solution are removed from the tube and mixed with an appropriate dispersion medium. Then the pure colloidal solution is obtained. So when you rotate it, after rotation, you'll get something like this. All the colloidal particles will settle here and solution will remain at the top. This solution will contain impurities. So what do? You take your test tube and throw all the liquid solution like this. In lab, we do it, right? You just make sure the precipitate does not get thrown away, right? You just remove the solution and in the tube, you have your colloidal particles left. In that you add a suitable dispersion medium, shake it, you'll get your colloidal solution back. Okay, which will have less impurities or which will have zero impurities, depending upon your efficiency. Okay. So yeah, by using a high-speed centrifugal machines having 15,000 or more RPM, revolutions per minute or rotation per minute, such machines are called ultra centrifuge. Normal centrifugation is around 500 RPMs, but here 500 to 1000 RPMs. Here you are doing 15,000 RPMs, right? It will be rotating in minute 15,000 times. So this process is known as ultra centrifugation. Normal process of centrifugation at very high speed is called ultra centrifugation. Correct? So colloidal particles have more density. They will settle at the bottom. Impurities will remain in the solution after centrifugation. Throw the impurities from the tube. Particles will be left behind. Add dispersion medium. Shake it. You'll get your colloidal solution. Okay? What is the purification used in your real life? Where is purification? I'll come to it, Pranav. I have already said your purification of blood is done. Your purification of blood is done by your kidneys. That is your most important part of the body. What are the applications of this? The applications of ultracentrifugation, you can say the applications of this is, there is something called Cottle smoke precipitator, right? There you use this for purification of the colloids there. Okay, but that's not required at this point. Most likely in applications of colloids, you'll get to know. Blood serum test. Yeah, same thing. That only, right? I said most of it application is found in blood, right? To judge how much colloidal particles are there, to purify your blood, all those things. Are these machines available in lab? Depends upon which kind of lab you are working in. In a normal lab, no. These machines will not be available in lab. Is there any secondary filter body part in our body? No. Kidneys are the only ones which filter your blood in your body. Majority of it. 2 kidneys. I think that's all right. Liver does it too. Liver does it very less, Pranav. 90 to 95% is done by your kidney only. Right. So this is your ultracentrifugation. So these are your purification methods, right? Is there any supplement for this? I did not understand, Pratham. Pratham K. What do you mean by this? Right. So let us do a question on this. Like generally, you will not get a question on this in your competitive exam, but since it is a part of textbook, we are reading it. Okay. The migration of dispersion medium under the influence of electric field is called. This is the type of question you can get. The migration of dispersion medium. Dispersion medium, you know what it contains. You should be knowing. Under the influence of electric potential is called, right? So let me give you the options. I think this is the most easiest thing you can ever answer. Right. I don't think so. This should be done wrong. Yes. So actually it is a part of the next topic, but still you can answer it here also because you have done electrodialysis. We'll understand the difference better. Right. So most of you have answered it. So let me close it on account of 3, 2, 1. Now. Right. So yeah, it is electroosmosis. You should have seen one thing carefully. If the particles are moving, you say dialysis, impurities or colloidal particles. But here solvent is moving. Dispersion medium is moving. So if dispersion medium is moving, solvent is moving. Movement of solvent is osmosis. Right. So osmosis is happening in the presence of electric field. Then you'll say it is electroosmosis. Right. So these small term-based questions can come. What is electrophoresis and all? We are going to study it in just 2 or 3 minutes. 2 or 3 to nahi, at least 5-10 minutes we will see what is electrophoresis. Yeah. Any doubt in this till this? Anyone? Any doubt in this? Anyone? Right. So I don't think there is any doubt in this. Right. So yeah, let's move towards the properties of colloids. This is the most important topic from exam point of view. This is the most important topic from exam point of view. So let me give you, you have studied solutions. Let me give you a basic idea. If you talk about solutions and colloidal solution, true solution and colloidal solution. So if you take these two things, which will have more colligative properties? If the molality, everything is same, which of these two solutions? Let's say if I ask you osmotic pressure, if the concentration is same, osmotic pressure will be more for true solution or colloidal solution. What do you think? Which will have more osmotic pressure, true solution or colloidal solution? Given the amount of solute is same or concentration is same. So all of you are saying colloidal solution will have more value of colligative properties, right? All right. So let us see, right? So if I take this piece of solute, 1 meter length, 1 meter breadth. Let me take a piece of solute in a solution, 1 meter length, 1 meter breadth. Here also same, concentration is same because amount of solute is same. 1 meter, 1 meter. Correct? So if your solute is present in true solution, this case mein it will be present divided into many parts. Again, solute will be present as many minute parts. So this is one part of the true solution. Similarly, the colloidal solution will be present in many parts. This is divided into many parts. And this part is the small part of the colloidal solution. Correct? So can you tell me which will have more size? Part of colloidal solution or the part of true solution? Which will have more size? Part of colloidal solution or true solution? More size. Yes. So this will have more size. If you talk about size of true solution will be less than colloidal solution. Correct? So if let's say this is 0.05 meter ka one part and this part will be 0.1 meter, more than the, वैसे 0.1 नहीं होगा, nanometer में जाता है, right? Let's say in nanometer only. Otherwise, you'll say, sir, you said wrong. So let's say this is 2 nanometer and this is 0.5 nanometer. Now the question is, if you take these two things, which will have more particles? Number of particles here, let us say, is X, and the number of particles here, let us say, is Y. So which case may number of particles will be more, X or Y? What do you think? This is a common sense. Very good. So number of particles is more in the case of Y, because you are dividing 1 meter by 0.5, right? And here 1 meter is divided by 2 nanometer, right? So 2 into 10 power minus 9 meter, and here 0.5 into 10 power minus 9 meter, right? So you can say you have 10 power 9 by 0.5 here particles. Here you have 10 power 9 by 2. Correct? So which is more? Which is more? Obviously 10 power 9 by 0.5 is greater than 10 power 9 by 2. So number of particles here is more. So now tell me, what is colligative property? Colligative property is what? It is the property which depends upon number of particles of solute. Correct? So if the number of particles of solute is more in true solution, that means the colligative property for true solution will be greater than colligative property for colloidal solution. Right? That means osmotic pressure for true solution is greater than osmotic pressure for colloidal solution. Delta TB of true solution is greater than delta TB of colloidal solution. Delta TF also. Right? That is the meaning of it. Right? So in short, colligative properties for colloidal solution have lower value than true solution. Colligative properties for true colloidal solution or colloids have lower value than true solution. Yes. Is that clear, everyone? Is that clear? How can you say dissociation is more, Pritesh, in true solution? Who told you? Dissociation is more in true solution. Who told you that? Right. So I hope the colligative properties point is clear to everyone in the properties of colloids. So let me go ahead with the next property, which is Brownian motion. Right. So what is Brownian motion? All of you know, correct? So colloidal particles can show mechanical properties like Brownian motion. They show other properties also, sedimentation and all. That's not important. Brownian motion. The zigzag motion of the particles is known as Brownian motion. Right? Now the question is why they show Brownian motion. What is the cause of Brownian motion? This is, everybody know this. The zigzag motion of colloidal particle is known as Brownian motion or Brownian movement. This is due to the impact of the molecules of the dispersion medium on the molecules of the dispersed phase. Some of you must have understood, but I did not understand. So now you need to tell me what is the cause of Brownian motion? How it happens? What do you think? What is the cause of Brownian motion? Yes. Correct. Yes, Veerbhadra. What is the cause of it? Collisions. So you should understand one thing. What is that? Colloidal particles have the particle size. Colloidal particles have the range of 1 nanometer to 1000 nanometer. 1 nanometer to 1000 nanometer. What does it mean? The particle size can be small. So every particle will have different size. Every particle has different size. Therefore, they have different mass and different kinetic energy also. Kinetic energy is half mv square. So every particle has different size. It will have different mass. It will have different kinetic energy. Since it has different mass, when the solvent molecules come and hit, let's say this is a lighter particle, small size lighter particle. Solvent molecules come and hit this particle. So it travels more distance. Correct? This is a heavier particle. Colloidal dispersion medium molecule or solvent molecule come and hit this particle. It will travel less distance. So therefore, they experience unequal collision. Therefore, they experience unequal collision. Right? So according to our theory, it says one particle will travel more distance, other particle will travel less distance, then some particle will travel even more distance. Right? So by the time some particle is here, some particle will be here, some will be here, some will be here. So when you connect their motions, it appears to be zigzag motion. Is that clear? Yes? Is that clear, everyone? So since they have different size, they have different mass, and since they have different mass, they will experience unequal collision, and due to unequal collision, their motions will be different, and their motions will be different is known as Brownian motion, right? Is that clear, everyone? The reason for Brownian motion. The reason can be asked in exam, so keep these points clear. All right, any doubt in this? You can ask. I'm moving ahead. Is it homogeneous or heterogeneous? Colloidal solution is a heterogeneous. It's a colloidal solution. So colloidal solution will be a heterogeneous solution, Chetna. We are talking about the zigzag motion of colloidal solution. All right. So last slide. So this is the last slide. Monisha, you are asking about this slide only, right? Before that slide is this. Right. So let's move ahead. The motion is not a single particle. It can be. It can be single particle also. It can be a different particle also. As you can see here, we have numbered the particles here. See here. We have numbered the particles here. When you collected, I think in the image it is not visible. This is first, second, third, right? So first, second, third, fourth, fifth, 7th, 9th, 14th. So they are different particles, right, Abhishek? So motion may be single or may be different particles. So when you connect the motion of different particles, you get a Brownian motion, right? Is it observed by Robert Brown? Yes, most likely. I need to check it. Right, Abhishek, but I would again say single particle can also show Brownian motion depending upon if the dispersion medium particles also have different size. Okay? Right. Now the Tyndall effect. Tyndall effect is shown by which type of solution? Heterogeneous solution. Keep that in mind. Tyndall effect is shown by heterogeneous solution. The scattering of light by colloidal particles is known as Tyndall effect. It's a 1 mark question for your board. 1 mark question for your board. It's a 1 mark question for your second PU board, right? True solution do not show Tyndall effect. Why true solution do not show Tyndall effect? Because they are homogeneous, correct? So true solution do not show Tyndall effect. Now, if you see this carefully, there are two conditions for Tyndall effect to take place. What are those? What are those two conditions which need to be satisfied? First one is size or diameter. You can say size or diameter of colloidal particles should be or should not be, you can say both, should not be much different, much smaller or much different than wavelength of light used. These two conditions are important. Wavelength of light used. This is a condition of resonance also. In optics, you'll study it. So now what we are saying here is the wavelength which is coming out here, lambda, and the particle size here, diameter of the particle size here. If this is 1 meter, it can be 0.8, 0.9. If it is 1 meter, the wavelength here is 1 meter, then this cannot be 0.05 meter, right? So basically the diameter of the colloidal particles and the wavelength of the light used should be same. This is the first condition for Tyndall effect to take place. What is the second condition? Refractive index. I hope you have studied refractive index mu, Snell's law. So refractive index of dispersed phase dP and dm should be of similar magnitude. It should be of similar magnitude. Matlab refractive index of dispersed phase and dispersion medium should also not differ much, because if refractive indexes are much different, then the refraction will take place, right? And the refraction will take place, and your wave you'll not get this type of path, right? Light will come from one medium to other medium, it will bend and move away of the medium, right? But if you want to show the Tyndall effect, right, the rays should remain in a given region. It should not deviate much. So for that, your refractive indexes should be same. If the refractive indexes are different, the bending of light will be more, right? So you'll not be able to see the light traveling in the same path. And the cone which you get here is also known as Tyndall cone. The cone which you observe here, you can say here or you can say here, both are fine, is known as Tyndall cone. It is known as Tyndall cone. So what is important here? Three things. What is Tyndall effect? What are the two conditions of Tyndall effect? Right? The two conditions are diameters of colloidal particles and wavelength of light used should be same. Dispersed phase and dispersion medium of the refractive index of dispersed phase and dispersion medium should be same. Same matlab similar. It cannot be exactly same. Right? So these are the conditions you observe for Tyndall effect. Right? And obviously, no need to tell, due to Tyndall effect, path of light gets illuminated. Tyndall effect, path of light gets illuminated. And all of you see this, this is a very common process or phenomena. When you sit in a dark room, light comes from a small hole. You see the Tyndall effect happening in the air also, right? And you must have seen it happens like in the conical form, right? That cone made by the Tyndall effect is known as Tyndall cone, right? Reason for second condition. Beta Ravi Kiran, I am repeating it, I guess, second or third time. If your refractive indexes are much different, dispersion medium and dispersed phase, refractive index are different means what? Light travels from rarer to denser. Right? This is a principle of refraction. So if the refractive indexes are different, the light will travel from one medium to other and bend more. Right? And if light bend more, light will come and go like this. Will you be able to see the Tyndall cone? You will not be able to see the Tyndall cone. Right? You'll not be able to see the Tyndall cone. It should happen in the same path. Right? So for that, it should be same. Correct? Yes. So why diameter should be same? I need to check that. There is a condition which is this. I don't remember that. It's a condition in this waves. I'll check this. Why it should be same, right? Most likely for effective collisions only. You can say that, yes, this is a condition for your scattering, right? This is a condition for your scattering of light. Right? Now see this, why it happens? Scattering of light takes place at this condition only. Why? If your wavelength is more, let's say lambda is more, correct? If your lambda is more, then your energy is what? Energy is hc by lambda. If your lambda is more means energy is less. That means the wave or light coming has a very less energy. If it has a very less energy, it will collide with some of the particles. If the colloidal particles are large, it will collide with some of the particles and come back. Right? And if the lambda is more or if the lambda is less, energy is high. And if the energy is high, the laser beam will pass straight through. It will not get scattered only. Right? For scattering to take place, the wavelength or the energy, right? Wavelength will produce such energy which should scatter these dispersion particles. For that condition to happen, your lambda and size of the particles should be approximately same. Because if your lambda is too small or too large, the scattering might not take place. This is a condition of scattering. Okay? Illuminated means visible. Illuminated means visible. The path of light becomes visible. You are sitting in a dark room where there is a one hole in the room. Sunlight comes from it. You can see the dust particles in the light. You can see the light coming. So light becomes visible to you. So that happens by Tyndall effect. Correct? So somebody else also asked something. Let me see. Right. So I think that's fine for us. I hope Tyndall effect has taken enough time. Particle will scatter the direction, all the direction, then how Tyndall effect is formed. How Tyndall cone is formed. You are absolutely right. The scattering will take place in all the directions. Correct? It will take place in all the directions. But after scattering, the light will travel some distance only. Right? If you consider that will lie in the Tyndall cone. We are not saying the scattering is happening only in this form. We are saying all the scattered lights lie in this Tyndall cone. We are never saying scattering is happening in one direction. It is happening in all the direction. That all the direction lie in one cone. That is called Tyndall cone. Opalescence means opaqueness, most likely. Veerbhadra. Most likely opalescence means which is not clear. Okay? So, in fact, not only this, there is one more experiment which has been done in this. Right? That true solution do not give Tyndall effect. Right? So, in a colloidal solution also, if the light is happening like this, you need to keep your microscope here at 90 degree. At 90 degree. Then only you observe your Tyndall effect very good. Then only you can observe Tyndall effect very good at 90 degree angle. It's not like other angles you will not see. You will see at other angles also. But the best Tyndall effect is observed when the angle between your eye or microscope and the light source is 90 degree. Okay? Does the light deflect or not? Light deflects. Why it will not deflect? Right? So now the charge on colloid. That's the most important part. I will explain it. This is the most important part. So charge on colloid, few points you should remember. Charge on colloid is due to preferential adsorption of ions. Adsorption of ions. Right? For example, I'll take the following case. Okay? All of you please pay attention. So now I am going to take two cases. Please pay attention. If I take silver nitrate, treat it with Ki in excess, I'll get AgI. Let us say AgI you are getting is a colloidal particle plus KNO3. Correct? This was case 1. Now let me take case 2. AgNO3 plus Ki gives you AgI plus KNO3. In this case, I am taking AgNO3 in excess. I am taking AgNO3 in excess. Now let us see what will happen. What is your colloidal particles form? AgI. So let me say this is my AgI colloidal particles form. Correct? This is your beaker. Right? This is your beaker. So what happens now? In your beaker, what will be present in more amount? What is present in, this is case 1. This is case 1. So AgI after being formed, what is present in excess? Ki. So there will be lot of Ki solution, K plus I minus. So which ion will be absorbed by AgI? It's common ion. So all the I minus will be absorbed by AgI. So your AgI precipitate or AgI colloidal particle will absorb what ions? I minus ions. correct? That means now your colloidal particles are what charge? Colloidal particles are negatively charged. Why they are negatively charged? Because they are absorbing negative ions. Because they are absorbing negative ions, correct? Now let us take the case 2. In case 2 also, you get a question on this experiment basically. In case 2 also, you take your AgI precipitate, AgI, and you take Ki solution. So now if you have taken AgI precipitate or colloidal solution, AgNO3 is present in excess. So there will be lot of Ag plus and NO3 minus ions in solution. So what will happen? Now your AgI colloidal particle will absorb what ions from the solution? Ag plus ions. So there will be lot of Ag plus ions on its surface. Now in this case, AgI is acting as what charge? AgI is acting as positively charged colloid. Positively charged colloid. Is that clear? So charge on the colloid is due to what ions it is absorbing on its surface, right? So charge on the colloid, NO3 minus will be present in the solution, Chetan. So charge on the colloid will be due to the ions which is absorbed on the surface of the colloid. Which ions are usually absorbed on its surface? Common ion. Common ions are usually absorbed, correct? So remember this, AgI can be positively charged or negatively charged, depend upon what is present in the solution and which ions it absorbs from the solution, right? For that, what I have done here is I have kept the examples of positively and negatively charged colloids here. You need to remember them, you need to by heart them. Your 50% questions come from this. You need to remember all sulfides are negatively charged, metal sulfides. All metal hydroxides, FeOH3 is positively charged, right? Proteins in acidic medium, positively charged colloid. Starch, gelatin, gum, charcoal. This is charcoal. All are negatively charged colloids, right? Basic dyes are positively charged. Acidic dyes, Congo red example, is negatively charged. Congo red you have seen in redox chapter, that titration table, right? So this is very, very important. Now, important is blood is a colloidal solution. Blood is a colloidal solution. Does it carry any charge? Blood is a colloidal solution. Does it carry any charge? Yes. What is the charge on the blood? Blood is a colloidal solution which contains negative charge. It has been proved by 2-3 experiments. Correct? It has been proved by 2-3 experiments. One was, you know, alum, Fitkiri, alum. So what is the purpose of alum in medicine? What is the purpose of alum in medicine? Alum is used for blood clotting. How blood clotting occurs? Alum is nothing but K2SO4, Al2SO4 whole thrice, right? Dot 24H2O, right? Not only that, Fe3 plus ions or Fe3 plus ions helps in blood clotting. How they helps in blood clotting? Blood is a colloidal solution like this, correct? These ions, Fe3 plus ions, converts your colloidal particles, that is your blood, into precipitate. They convert it into precipitate, which is known as blood clot. Blood clot. Since the positive ions is clotting the blood, that means your blood should contain the negative charge. Why is it so? This is according to Hardy-Sulzer's law. See that tomorrow. I will discuss it again tomorrow. Calcium 2 plus also, not only that, Fe3 plus also, alum also. There is a, I don't know, protein or enzyme called heparin that also does the same process. So I'll discuss it again in detail tomorrow. The charge on colloid, we'll do some questions on it. So today's quiz, let us discuss and finish it off. You can see the quiz now. But hemoglobin is positively charged. Hemoglobin is a component of blood. Ashutosh, hemoglobin is not blood itself. Right. So in 2016, there is a unique memorial honoring this individual was inaugurated by our PM in Tamil Nadu. While the person is known to us for many reasons, right? Playing the Rudra Veena as seen in the is the art of installation inside the memorial, and writing Tamil poetry were a few lesser known facts about him. Yes. So I think I got disconnected. So yeah, I think most of you are right. He's APJ Abdul Kalam. Correct. Most of you are right. Its hairstyle is very famous, so most of you can guess it easily. So it is APJ Abdul Kalam. Very good. Good to know that most of you know about him. There are very known facts about him. Very good known facts.